समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Post the Pahalgam outrage, the needle is moving very fast, very rapidly, or maybe very slowly. That would depend on how you look at this. You would say it's moving very fast because one big development after the other is happening. India, Prime Minister Modi cut short his visit to Saudi Arabia, held his cabinet committee on security, decided to keep Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, besides taking many other punitive, mostly diplomatic measures against Pakistan, including cancellation of visas, etc. Then Pakistan responded in a tit-for-tat fashion. In fact, Pakistan's response we had anticipated yesterday, because some of the well-informed handles in Pakistan had already begun to ask the question that, oh, people are asking, Hamid Mir asked this, please see his tweet. He asked if India can suspend or put in abeyance, India hasn't said suspended, the Indus Waters Treaty. Can Pakistan also similarly suspend the Shimla Agreement? So what Pakistan has done today, they haven't quite suspended the Shimla Agreement as yet. They have said after their cabinet meeting that Pakistan, and I'm quoting from their statement, reserves the right to hold in abeyance the Shimla Agreement. So each side, India responded to Pahalgam massacre. So India responded to the Pahalgam outrage and Hindu-specific communal outrage intended to hurt India as deeply as possible, also trying to divide India on communal grounds. This was a very calculated, brutal, cynical act, comparable to what Hamas did on October 7, 2023 in Israel. Now, India responded after that Pakistan has responded now. So what we'll do is, because this is a fast-moving story, and that's the reason you are seeing 2 episodes of Cut The Clutter today. If you think that you are ODing on it, that I'm giving you an overdose, please let me know, we'll not do it. But chances are that given the way the news clock will move now, we will have many more days like this, because something's bound to happen that I can feel in my bones. Today, the Prime Minister's speech, in fact, in some ways, it was very grim and it was very tough. It had held many warnings, but it was less specific than speeches he has delivered in the past, post-Uri and post-Pulwama. I will take you through those speeches also and draw some analytical points. But today, just the lack of detail about what India might be planning, right? At the same time, use of expressions like whatever little space they've got left for themselves, उनकी जितनी भी ज़मीन, थोड़ी बहुत ज़मीन बची हुई है, वो भी मिट्टी में मिला दी जाएगी. This indicates to me that something major is afoot. When, how, who knows? But in the course of time, we will find out. That said, let me first do a little bit of analysis on the Prime Minister's speeches. 3 speeches after 3 major terror attacks in his time. All 3 major terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. The first after Uri, you will see the dates on your screen. The first after the Uri attack, the second after Pulwama, and third now after Pahalgam. So if I take you back to what he said after Uri. After Uri, he said, and I'm quoting parts of it, he said, first of all, speaking at Kozhikode Beach at the beginning of the BJP's National Council meeting, he struck a balance between responding to belligerent sections within his own support base who had been seeking immediate visible action against Pakistan, and also positioning the Prime Minister of India as the statesman who saw the India story bigger and brighter than Pakistan's than the India-Pak tension story. At the same time, he repeatedly praised the armed forces. He said, for example, and I am quoting, "Sacrifice of our 18 Jawans will not go in vain." This line was repeated after Pulwama as well. Let the terrorists make no mistake, he said, India will never forget the Uri attack. We will leave no stone unturned to isolate Pakistan in the world. So the promise was to isolate Pakistan in the world. Then he goes on to say, India never has and never will bow to terror. It will defeat terror. Our soldiers have defended the country, fighting and protecting the citizens. We are proud of their sacrifices. That was the compliment to the armed forces. Then he said, referring to Pakistan, he spoke a lot about Pakistan. He said there is one nation in Asia whose aim is to ensure that 21st century does not become Asia's century and it remains associated with terrorism. That is referring to Pakistan. And again, I quote, this one country exports terrorism to other countries. That country wants South Asia's history to be splattered with blood, killings and terror. Whenever a terror attack takes place, only one country is blamed. Whenever we hear about terror strikes, news follows that either the terrorists went from there or like Osama bin Laden, they settled there afterwards. At the same time, in that post-Uri speech, he reached out to the people of Pakistan and tried to make a differentiation between them and the establishment in Pakistan. He spoke directly to Pakistanis, telling them to ask their rulers that at a time India was exporting software to the entire world, Pakistan was bent on exporting terrorism. Why? He also returned to the Balochistan theme just after the Uri attack. He had, for the first time, mentioned Balochistan in his Independence Day speech. He again said, I want to address the people of Pakistan today. Your rulers are misleading you by singing songs on Kashmir and reading out scripts written by terrorists on Kashmir. You should ask them why they were not able to handle East Pakistan and why they cannot handle Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, Gilgit, Sindh, Balochistan and Pakhtunistan. A day would come, Prime Minister Modi said after Uri in his second speech, when the people of Pakistan will go against their own country to fight against terrorism. New Delhi, he said, would continue to expose Pakistan. So you can see there was one tonality to that speech. Then we come to Pulwama. Pulwama, the response to Uri was a quiet, across the board surgical strike. It was announced afterwards and some bit of mobilization precautions were taken, particularly on Punjab border and elsewhere, some emptying of villages, just in case there was some kind of a response from Pakistan. But also that was to up the tension level so people would be convinced that something major had been done. Post Pulwama, the message was a bit different. Post Pulwama, it was a much bigger incident. It was also on the eve of the 2019 elections, most importantly. There he talked about giving muh tod jawab, befitting reply. He spoke, in fact, after Pulwama at two separate events. One was the flagging off ceremony of the Vande Bharat Express from Delhi to Varanasi, and later at a public meeting in Jhansi. And that public meeting was almost like an election meeting, like an election launch meeting. That was after the meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security. He said, and this is very specific, and that's why it's significant, because one, it was very specific. Second, it shows you the distinction between the post-Uri statement and now the post-Pahalgam statement. He said, we have given full freedom to security forces. I want to tell the terror outfits and those aiding and abetting them that they have made a big mistake. They will have to pay a very heavy price for their actions. Let me assure the nation that those behind this attack, the perpetrators of this attack, will be punished. Then he also made an appeal to political parties in India not to politicize the terror attack, because the neighboring country, he did not name Pakistan in this case. He named Pakistan the first time. The neighboring country was trying to destabilize India. He went on to say, again in the same conciliatory manner, internally conciliatory manner, it is my request to all my friends that this is a very sensitive and emotional moment and the nation stands united in this fight against terror. We should speak in one voice and rise above politics. The message which should go across the world is that we are one nation, one voice in our fight against terror, and the fight which we have to win. And then, once again, without naming Pakistan, he cautioned Pakistan. He said, if a country thinks that it can demoralize India with its dastardly acts and nefarious designs, let me state categorically that it should stop daydreaming. let me say categorically that it should stop. Daydreaming in Jhansi, spoke in Hindi, where he laid the foundation of the defense corridor and other development projects. I told you it was in the run-up to the election campaign. He said, with the pictures of the CRPF men who had died at Pulwama in that bombing, suicide bombing, forming the backdrop, he said, सुरक्षा बलों के लिए आगे की कार्यवाही तय करने के लिए समय क्या हो, स्थान क्या हो, स्वरूप क्या हो, वो सारे फैसले करने के लिए इजाजत दे दी गई है. Translated, security forces have been permitted to decide the time, place and mode of future action, which means he said very clearly that there will be action by security forces. That is not something that he has said this time, which either you could say that he's trying to create more space and time, so he doesn't have the pressure to react absolutely immediately when the Pakistanis are most ready, or you could say that maybe he's not talking about those points in detail is actually ominous. We'll come to what he said in his speech today also in detail, and you can also make those analytical points. Post Pulwama, he went on to say, हमारा पड़ोसी देश ये भूल रहा है कि ये नई नीति और नई रीति वाला देश है. The neighboring country forgets that this is an India with a new policy and new practice. That's when the idea of घर में घुस के मारेंगे, that we will enter your country and thrash you there or teach you a lesson there, that idea was much in the air once again in the run-up to the elections. He also said the terror outfits and their masters will be given a fitting reply. Now we know what happened post Pulwama. We know the bombing at Balakot. We know the Pakistani response the next day. We also know about the air skirmish, at which point that situation settled down to the extent these things settled down. Then came the change of the constitutional status. Election took place. The first thing the new government did as parliament met was to change the constitutional status of Jammu and Kashmir, which made Article 370 infructuous, in fact of no use altogether. Right? And that is when Imran Khan, basically, he burnt up all his diplomatic ammunition. He downgraded the diplomatic presence in India, and India did vice versa. That means high commissioners went back, you were left with the deputy high commissioner. Much of the trade was stopped, much of the travel was stopped, much of the visa giving was stopped. So that escalatory ladder, several steps had already been climbed by Imran Khan in August 2019. At this point, there wasn't that much more left to do, except now going for these big treaties. The Indus Waters Treaty on India's side and Shimla Agreement on Pakistan's side. Now see what he said, and I will speak in Hindi as he spoke, because sometimes the tone matters, and maybe you can see some subtle distinctions. I can't see very much. I think the English translation is very good. He says, आज उन सभी की मृत्यु पर जिनकी मृत्यु पहलगाम में हुई है, आज उन सभी की मृत्यु पर कारगिल से कन्याकुमारी तक हमारा दुख एक जैसा है, हमारा आक्रोश एक जैसा है. वी आर ऑल यूनाइटेड. ये हमला सिर्फ निहत्थे पर्यटकों, अनाम टूरिस्ट पर नहीं हुआ है. देश के दुश्मनों ने भारत की आत्मा पर हमला करने का दुस्साहस किया है. मैं बहुत स्पष्ट शब्दों में कहना चाहता हूं कि जिन्होंने ये हमला किया है, उन आतंकियों को और इस हमले की साजिश करने वालों को उनकी कल्पना से भी बड़ी सजा मिलके रहेगी. आई एम श्योर मोस्ट ऑफ यू कैन फिगर आउट व्हाट ही इज सेइंग, दैट द पनिशमेंट दिस टाइम विल बी सो बिग दैट दोज who are the perpetrators and those behind them who've planned this atrocity, it would be beyond the imagination even of the perpetrators and their masters. I will now read out to you some lines that he spoke in English. He said, friends, today from the soil of Bihar, and he spoke in English partly to address the international community and partly also to address many people in India who might not understand Hindi that well, or who might not understand the nuance in Hindi. That's the reason English as well. He's never done this before in a speech in India, and in this case, this is a speech in Bihar. So he's saying, friends, today from the soil of Bihar, I say to the whole world, India will identify, track and punish every terrorist and their backers. We will pursue them to the ends of the earth. India's spirit will never be broken by terrorism. Terrorism will not go unpunished. I'm skipping a couple of sentences. Everyone who believes in humanity is with us. I thank the people of various countries and their leaders who have stood with us in these times. Now, this is also in the backdrop of the phone call with Donald Trump. And today, after his speech, we also had Benjamin Netanyahu and Emmanuel Macron also calling him in solidarity. Now, if you see the statement, it's very short. It does not say free hand given to the armed forces. It does not say people will be soon called to account. It does not mention any time frame. It also gives him the flexibility to decide who the perpetrators are, who the masters are, and who is it that should get this retribution from India. Now, once again, interpretation is up to you. You can see it as a calculated move from him to create space and time for himself so that India's response is not predictable. Response from India will come, for sure it will come, but if you give yourselves a deadline, or if it sounds like you are giving yourself a deadline, then you are also making it that much easier for your adversary, who's quite well armed and quite well equipped. Those are questions that come up from this latest speech. Read it again with reference to his earlier two speeches, because there are subtle differences from one to the other. In the first, he's addressing the people of Pakistan directly. In the second, he's saying, I've told the armed forces to choose your time and method. In the third, while he does not talk of specifics and does not again name Pakistan, he said he goes to the extent of saying, अब आतंकियों की बची खुची जमीन को भी मिट्टी में मिलाने का समय आ गया है. That means, now again, you can translate it the way you wish, right? जिसकी जो श्रद्धा हो, जिनकी रही भावना जैसी. Either you can see it as him meaning that the land where they sit, that's where their centers, their markazes, their headquarters are, that will not be destroyed. Or you can mean that he's saying it metaphorically, land ideologically, where you get your support, ideological, political, etc. That can also happen with a massive marginalization of Pakistan. So once again, it's a speech today that leaves everybody guessing. Everybody is guessing, and most of all, I can promise you, people in Islamabad, even more than that, people in Rawalpindi at the GHQ of Pakistani Army are guessing and reading very carefully between these words, not just between the lines. That said, a couple of things that have happened today. I told you that Pakistan has said that they will exercise, they reserve the right to hold in abeyance. They haven't said they've exercised it yet. They reserve the right to hold in abeyance the Shimla Agreement, which has kept some modicum of stability, in fact, a fair bit of stability in India-Pakistan relations since 1972. I'm sharing with you once again the full text of the Shimla Agreement. See it on your screens. I'm also sharing a link with you. In the Shimla Agreement, particularly, there is clause 4.2. That's very important. That says that line of control will now be respected. That all issues regarding Kashmir between India and Pakistan will now be bilaterally discussed and settled. So no third party, no UN resolutions. It doesn't specifically say no UN resolutions, but that is the clear implication of it. No side will unilaterally try to alter the status of the line of control, and no side will use force in doing so. Now, the fact is that Pakistan itself has been in violation of this, most dramatically in the case of Kargil. So you can see that Shimla Agreement, while it was a big stabilizing factor, it did not fully negate the possibility of a side taking advantage of the line of control. Pakistan is broke it in Kargil. I know Pakistanis like to say that India broke it in Siachen as well. This is the 40th year of Indian troops moving up to Siachen, and I can say with some humility that that's a story I broke in India Today magazine. Those days there were no TV screens, and you said exclusive, mega exclusive, etc., etc. But the story is there printed. It's on India Today's archives 40 years back. Pakistanis say that India also violated the Shimla Agreement by going to Siachen Glacier, but that's not true, because India moved into an area which had not been demarcated, where line of control had not been demarcated in 1972. That is from point NJ9842 on the map, from where it was said that the line will now go along the glaciers. So both countries made their own interpretation. From the Indian point of view, line went up like this around the glacier to the highest ranges and then came down like this. The Pakistanis presumed that around the glaciers means, I'm now oversimplifying it, the other side. The fact is nobody was sitting there, and when news spread that Pakistanis were planning to go there, Indian side also got into the act and they beat them in the race. That's the story. So India going to Siachen is not a violation of the Shimla Accord in the sense that there was no line of control in that region on the glacier. That has to be understood very clearly. Now, Pakistan Prime Minister also said that this reserving the right to hold in abeyance does not apply just to Shimla Agreement, but to all agreements between India and Pakistan. Now, India and Pakistan have multiple agreements. There's no point going into all of them or many of them. I will tell you one that's really important. That is the agreement between the two countries on not attacking each other's nuclear installations. This is not nuclear weapon installations alone, nuclear research, nuclear energy, anything. Neither attacking nor helping any other foreign power attack these installations. This agreement was signed between India and Pakistan, in fact, between Rajiv Gandhi and Benazir Bhutto on 31st December 1988. I'm sharing a copy with you. You see it on your screen. There's also a link. This was finally implemented after all the ratifications on January 27, 1991. Since then, on January 1 every year, both sides have exchanged with each other without fail. Even during warlike periods, without fail, they've exchanged the lists of nuclear installations on either side, saying these are my nuclear installations. This one says these are my nuclear installations, which means tomorrow, if the balloon goes up, these will not be attacked. Are the Pakistanis also reserving the right to hold in abeyance that agreement? I don't know, because this is a general boilerplate statement from the Pakistani Prime Minister. Having said that, there are some indications of initial moves on the ground as well. Pakistan issued a NOTAM or notice to airmen and marines in the Arabian Sea area because they said they were carrying out naval exercises and also some missile firing tests. Indian Air Force also announced a new exercise Akraman, which is ongoing in the central sector with a very large number of highly potent assets. These, however, as we know, are really early sparring moves. These are, however, very early moves, and there is always the hazard of overinterpreting them. This is moving really fast. So please do stay with the print.